Hi there, my name is Michael Cousins, and welcome to another Laker lesson brought to you by GVSU. Laker lessons cover key topics in K-12 education, and today's lesson is part 3 of 3 on our discussion of how school leaders can best use NWEA data. We've already covered fall and winter NWEA data, and now we are ready to dive into the spring NWEA reports. Our GVSU colleague, Jeff Maxwell, is back for the 3rd time. Jeff, thanks for being here once again.
Thank you, Michael.
So how will this video look and these reports look a little different than what we just saw?
So I think the difference is we're going to see a lot of the same reports, but we're looking at those reports at a different moment in time, and with a different purpose. Ultimately, we're trying to answer the questions, did students learn what they were supposed to learn, and what does this mean for students moving forward?
That sounds good. Let's get into it.
Excellent. So once again, we're here trying to answer the question of, I have the data, and now what do I do with it? And we're focusing on our end of year spring NWEA assessment data. So today we're going to once again look at what are the highest leverage reports to run at the end of the year to inform student achievement and growth trends at the school and district level, grade level, and classroom level. And then we're going to use specific data reports to evaluate and communicate progress to stakeholders, inform instructional practices, and coach teachers. So as I already said, we have 2 big priorities as school leaders at the end of the year related to teaching and learning. Obviously, there's a lot happening at the end of a school year, but with regards to academics and learning, we're simultaneously looking back while also looking forward. So in terms of looking back over the course of the year, did students learn what they were supposed to learn? How are they performing in terms of proficiency, and how much did they grow? And then we're also looking forward. What do we need to do to be better next year? How do the instructional trends that we're seeing through these reports inform future planning, such as curriculum decisions, instructional practices, and even classes and scheduling for the upcoming school year? We're going to look at 6 high leverage reports to run at the end of the year. At the board level, school level, and classroom teacher level. We're going to take a look at the district summary, the student growth summary report, which we have seen many times, the grade report, and the achievement status and growth report. And then at the teacher level, we're looking at those individual class reports and the achievement status and growth summary report with quadrant chart. So these are the reports that we're going to see. You may have seen them in other videos, but again, they resonate differently when we run them at the end of the year as it relates to the different decisions that we're going to make related to students. Again, different reports are for different purposes. We're going to use the district summary and student growth summary report at the board level, achievement status and growth report at the school leadership level, as well as the grade report. And then at the teacher level, really diving into that class report and quadrant chart. So as you may have seen in other videos, the district summary report allows us to compare student achievement across multiple schools, terms, and years. It's going to give us information related to the number of students that we tested, the mean RIT scores by grade level from one year to the next, and student performance trends in specific instructional areas. This is going to help us to highlight end-of-year academic performance and growth trends by grade level across multiple schools, testing terms, and years. And again, this is going to help inform high-level instructional decisions or practices, as well as potential areas for the school district to shift focus or prioritize focus. The student growth summary report is a very high-level report that gives me a snapshot of instructional performance, student achievement, and growth trends for a given calendar year. In this case, we're going to be looking at the growth summary report from fall to spring. That's going to give us average RIT scores by grade, achievement percentile by grade, the average RIT growth versus expected growth, the school's conditional growth percentile, average RIT growth by grade level, and the number and percentage of students who met projected growth targets. So a ton of information on one page and in one report. This is to really highlight end-of-year academic performance and growth trends across the school and across grade levels and inform high-level instructional decisions. You also have the option, if you choose, to look at spring to spring growth if you want to see a true calendar year's level of growth, or get a little bit more specific and run the winter to spring report if that's what you want to see in terms of measuring growth for different portions of the year. So the first thing that you'll see in the student growth summary report is the number of growth events, which are number of students who took the test both in the fall and in the spring. The mean RIT scores by grade level for your different testing periods. So in this case, we're looking at fall compared to spring. The achievement percentile of those students in the fall versus the spring. The observed RIT point growth that students had at that grade level compared to what their projected growth was. And then over here in pink is the school conditional growth percentile. That's showing us how fast are these students growing, or how much growth did these students have compared to their statistically similar peers across the country. Again, you want to look at numbers above the 50th percentile. That would indicate that students at that grade level are growing at or above the rate of peers across the country. And then finally, we can see the number of students who met their projected growth target and the corresponding percentage. Down at the bottom, we can see the actual student growth averages by grade level compared to what their projected growth was for that grade level. So we can see here that kindergarten students grew on average 17 RIT points. They were expected to grow about 16.7, so on average the kindergartners grew what we expected them to grow. On the contrary, fourth graders were expected to grow about 11 points, and we saw that they grew 8, so that they did not hit their projected growth target. So this might lead us to ask, what's happening at the fourth grade level whereby these students didn't grow at the same rate we would expect them to. Shifting down now to the leadership team, we're going to look at the grade report. This helps us see grade level RIT scores versus district and national means for an entire grade level. It's also going to tell us the number of students at a grade level who scored at or above the grade level mean. It's going to give us student performance by instructional area as well as individual student performance. And this is going to be a really helpful report to inform future planning. This might help us make decisions about students that we may need to refer to summer school, or this may inform different different classroom rosters for the upcoming school year. So the first thing that we see on this grade report is the mean RIT score for this grade compared to what the district level mean RIT was. So the fifth graders in math scored a 223.5 on average compared to the district average of a 219 and the national mean level RIT score of a 218.7. So on average, these fifth graders in math were scoring not only above the district level mean, but above the national mean as well. We can then see that there were 106 students at this grade level with valid growth scores. That means fall and spring. 70 of those 106 scored at or above the district level mean, and 70 scored at or above the grade level national grade level mean RIT score. You can then see down here on the table below the percentage of students that fell into the different student grouping levels for the different instructional areas. So it just helps us give a different breakdown of where are students falling, who is scoring in very high percentiles, and who are in those lower percentile groups. Over to the right, we can also see how students performed by instructional areas. This table might indicate that geometry might be an area where we need to focus for the upcoming school year to really boost student strengths around geometry, as it is slightly lower than the overall RIT average for this particular grade level. The next report to look at the leadership team level is the Achievement Status and Growth Report. This shows us not only student level RIT scores, fall to spring, but their observed RIT growth, their projected growth compared to their observed growth, and students who did or did not meet projected growth targets. This is a really great report to run at the teacher level to inform those instructional coaching conversations or data meetings with teachers at the end of the year, push their reflection on what went well and what might be opportunities for improvement, and really make recommendations for future services for students. That might be classroom placements for the upcoming school year, as well as maybe informing who might need to leverage the resources of summer school to close some of those instructional gaps. In this case, we're looking at math scores for first graders in Mr. Bates's classroom. We can see all the students here, their fall RIT scores versus their spring RIT scores, the corresponding achievement percentile ranges for those students, and then what their projected growth was versus observed growth, and then in purple there, did they meet their projected growth? This would be an incredibly valuable report to run, to look at and filter out those students who did not meet their projected growth targets. Why did they not? And what resources might they need? Do they need some supplemental resources to take home over the summer? Do we need to meet with those parents and refer these students for some additional services through summer school or other supplemental programming? In the orange, you can also see their conditional growth percentile. So Todd here at the top was projected to grow 14 RIT points. He did not grow at all. There was zero growth. He did not meet his projected growth target and was in the bottom 2 percentile of all students across the country in terms of growth. So those might be students that we really want to target for some other supplemental academic interventions over the summer months, and potentially flag for some interventions in the fall. At the teacher level, we're going to look at the class report next. This looks very similar to the grade report that we just looked at. However, it's focused on an individual teacher's classroom. We're going to see class level RIT scores compared to district and national means, the number of students in that class at or above the grade level mean RIT score, class performance by instructional area, and for reading, we're looking at those Lexile ranges where students are performing. Again, this is going to be a really helpful report to run and lead end-of-year data conversations with teachers and inform future planning. We can answer questions like what went well in the class, what areas do we maybe need to focus on in the future to improve student performance, and again, leverage this report to make recommendations around interventions for students, summer programming, and inform decisions about class placement for the fall. This report looks very similar. We can again see for this particular classroom the number of students who tested both in the fall and in the spring, how these students scored. In this case, we're looking at language arts reading. In Mr. Bates's classroom, they scored a 177.9 compared to the grade level mean RIT of a 171.4. And there were 19 out of the 24 students that were scoring at or above the grade level mean RIT score. This particular group here of 2 students who fell into that bottom range and the 2 students who were in the low average range might be a place to start to identify these 4 students might be students we can and should consider for maybe some supplemental summer programming. We can then also see how students performed in these different instructional areas as it relates to reading and language arts. And then looking at the class roster and the individual student level performance We can see our different student groupings by RIT score ranges, as well as their instructional areas and how they scored in those different areas. So again, we can identify 4 students who are scoring in the range of a 151 to 164. Might be some students that might need some extra services. And we can see the students down near the bottom of the page who we might need to be pushing a little bit, who might need to be challenged a little bit. Highlighted here are the Lexile ranges from their corresponding RIT scores. And we can see how students performed in the different instructional areas as it relates to reading and language arts. Another way to look at the same reports is, instead of looking at the RIT bands for those different instructional areas, we can get RIT band descriptors. So instead of seeing the actual numbers over here on the right side, we can see a descriptor of, are they at the low or low average subgroup, or high average, or average. So we could see, based on this information, where students' strengths and or weaknesses might lie related to these various instructional subcategories. Lastly, at the teacher level, we're going to take a look at the achievement status and growth report, comparing fall versus spring. Again, looking at what was their achievement versus their growth. And again, this report could help us quickly identify those students that we, number one, might need to push and challenge in terms of growth, as well as the students that might need some supplemental supports. And this is particularly helpful when we look at the quadrant chart associated with that. So we're going to go to a little bit of a live demo of this report right now. So from the MAP growth report screen, we're going to scroll down to achievement status and growth summary with quadrant chart report. This allows us to pick the testing terms. We're going to look at spring of 2021, and that term tested, we're going to select our school. We're going to pick an educator, and then we're going to choose fall to spring growth summary report and click create report. This shows us, on this quadrant report, we're looking at achievement percentile from low achievement to high achievement on the x-axis, and the rate of growth, the conditional growth percentile. How fast are these students growing compared to their peers, from low growth to high growth. If we want to look at one subject at a time, let's first look at reading. So all these individual squares here represents a student in Mr. Bates's class. And these students falling down here in the pink area are students who are not only performing, achieving at below the 50th percentile compared to their peers, they're also not growing at a very fast rate. So these are students who are performing low and not growing, and may be some individual students that we might want to identify for some additional supports. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we're seeing students who are achieving at very high levels and also growing at high rates. So that's how we can read this particular chart. And as we hover over the different squares, it identifies who those students are. We can click on the individual squares and see that specific student level data. If you scroll down, you can also see, once I click off of this particular student, you can see everybody's individual data as we scroll down. And the color square that is next to the student's name indicates where they show up on this quadrant chart. And we can look at that for math as well, and we can see how the data changes. So hopefully this presentation gave you some ideas of some different high-level reports that we can run at the end of the year to, number one, determine how did we do in moving our students forward, and what do we need to do to continue to meet the diverse needs of our students and inform instructional practices.
Jeff, thank you so much again for being here and taking us now through a full school year of NWEA data. Really important stuff. glad you could share all that insight and give more of a deeper look into all these reports that are great for educators. So
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this video. Now remember, this is part 3 of 3 videos. If you have not seen Jeff's overview of fall data and winter data, you will want to go back and check those out as well, or jump into them when the time is appropriate in your school year. As always, thank you for joining us on this Laker lesson. We'll see you next time.